Welcome to the Cardboard Herald podcast. I am Eric, joined as always by my lovely, effervescent co-host Jack.
Scholarly. Do you see the pencil? That
You
makes
do.
me scholarly.
You do. The mechanical big pencil.
Yep, I could have that. Oh, geez.
To go with the big razor for your head.
Yep, exactly. All right, we're in good shape.
Hello, Jack. How are you doing on this fine Sunday evening?
Doing good. The logistics of us recording continues to be a not insignificant process with us on different coasts and different work schedules, even if we were in the same community. And that is challenging, but it's a Sunday night and I get to hang out with one of my best buds. So,
Exactly.
I'm feeling good.
Well, hello. Welcome in to this podcast to all of our listeners. This week I have been super happy with how many of the games that we played at that Asmodee creator event have made their way to Board Game Arena. Crafting the Cosmos has made it, and that was the one that out of all of the games there, was the most excited for, so I've gotten to play that. It's still super fun. I think that game is really up my alley. I'm going to have to play it some more and maybe see about getting it some plays in person at some point or another. But
how does it translate the sort of physicality of the game? Because one of the things that caught my eye is just how much of a toy factor it had. Sure, I know mechanically that can translate no problem, but the presence, it's almost like Gizmos or something, where a big part of it is that tactile look and you just kind of want to get in there. Do you still feel it's as inviting and kind of encouraging playing it digitally?
Oh, no. I think this is a game that in person, from what I remember, I mean, at this point it's been a handful of months since I played it in person for about 20 minutes at most, if that. But I think it definitely still is a very good in-person game in a way that I think Board Game Arena is a great way to get your fix, but it definitely isn't the same thing that we played where you're like moving these little hungry hippo style balls around to make elements. But it still just is a interesting game for what it is. Like, I just think that it is up my alley in terms of weird decision spaces that you keep finding yourself in, where it's like, well, how many...
Did you play it solo?
It doesn't have solo on Board Game Arena right now, so...
Okay.
Went through the tutorial, played a few games against other people, just random people who had tables open, and had a great time with it. So I played that, which was rad, just because it's been a little bit since we played it at PAX, so I kind of forgot I forgot a few different aspects of the rules, but it ended up being, I'm still excited for that game to fully release and for me to find a copy of it somewhere.
Did we talk about Yokohama last week?
I don't believe so.
We
did not talk about Yokohama.
Have you played Yokohama?
I have not played Yokohama.
Let me tell you about Yokohama. So Yokohama was a game du jour, like a very popular game when it originally came out. I want to say 2016. Yes, I'm looking it up here. And it was a TMG game.
Did you have that answer already pulled up when you rhetorically asked yourself the question?
No. I was looking it up as I was guessing on that. But I know the time frame because I went to Dice Tower Con 2017, and that's where I first played it, and it was one of the new hotness games at that convention, along with Ethnos, the first time that I played that. And it was, at that point, one of the more complex worker placement games that I'd played. It just has some logistic pathing stuff that's going on where you're setting up workers but not activating them until you have your president of your company moving around. And like many TMG games, it's finding its way into reprint. Tasty Minstrel went under, though it was a very beloved company that was trying some really interesting stuff. We now have Harvest, which we on the channel were huge fans of.
Yeah.
And then Yokohama just had a reprint with I want to say it's Synapsis Games that released a new version. Yes. Unlike Harvest, they did almost nothing mechanically, but the visuals are really outstanding. The components are really nice. And there's a couple really subtle mechanical differences, but it's still a really good game. It really didn't need much. I would have preferred kind of like a Yokohama second edition, especially with how much of a glow up that Harvest had. But nonetheless, it's really nice. I found a cheap copy, surprisingly cheap, because the Kickstarter delivery for this new version was within the last 6 months or so.
Oh, wow.
So I don't know what that says about Synapsis Games. But I went ahead and picked that up. It's still a great game. Still just really solid economic Euro set in 19th century Japan once Japan opened up to Western trade.
Cool. Yeah, I this is not exactly the same, but it is a worker placement that I played as well. Set in Japan? Maybe set in Japan? I'm at this point. Yeah, it's set in Japan. White Castle.
Oh, I was going to say
White
Castle. Yeah. Yes.
I got that played earlier today, the solo version of it, as well. I think that worker placement is that's my jam. And I haven't played White Castle in a little bit. I forget the last time I played. I know I played it solo like right around when we first moved here, and I think I might have played it solo again between now and then. But every time I play it, I'm always just reminded of, oh wow, this game's amazing.
Yeah, obviously that was one of the best games and this channel's favorite game, not last year, but the year before. And man, the economy of decisions that you're making, and I can imagine that for some people that is like just too brain burny. And I am someone who kind of gets overwhelmed by too much information, but something about how White Castle organizes strategy and giving you just a little bit of a nudge and kind of seeing where this can result in just a couple turns. It's less like the kind of development and strategy of like someone who outlines a story, and more like George R.R. Martin famously talked about how he was a gardener with his plot developments, where he left a little seeds that he could pick up on, and sometimes they would kind of wither, and sometimes, he'd be able to blossom them. And so instead of having this like concrete outline of what needed to happen, he was a gardener. And that rings true to me with how the White Castle works. I still feel like, turn 6 or 7 is still reaping the rewards of a couple early decisions, but I wasn't locked into those exactly.
Yeah,
like
totally.
I'm continually pivoting. It's so good.
It's so good.
And the solo is great too.
Yeah, and I think that makes it such a solid contention for like if I had to pick 5 games only for it to be like on that list. It's at least, it makes it worthy of being in the discussion, is what I would say.
Worthy of being in the discussion. As if maybe I too had written in this notebook in front of me a list of games that, if I had only 5, say desert island games, what they would be.
When you first sent the text of like, oh, what about desert island games? I don't know if I texted you that I made the confusion, but I read it as Forbidden Island games. And I was really confused for a bit because I was like, Forbidden Island? There's only 3 games. What do you mean 5 Forbidden Island games?
Hey, you're behind the times, man. We're up to 4. We got Island, Desert, Sky, and Jungle. I haven't played the latter 2.
When did Jungle come out? I knew about Sky.
Like 2 years ago, and while Sky
Jungle
was
is not going to give me the answer. I was Googling just Jungle. That's not...
Yeah. Forbidden Sky was not particularly well received, but Jungle is supposed to be good.
We could do a podcast on those too. Board game series, I feel like is a topic. We'll loop back to that. We'll put a pin in that. We will reassess that when the time comes. But
citizens of the audio board game verse, if you want a Cardboard Herald review of Forbidden Jungle, then we will go out and get a copy of Forbidden Jungle to play this game. Maybe we can find some way of doing like some, like solo playthrough of the game too.
Maybe do a... I mean, we could also just do like podcast, like do a podcast on Forbidden Island, do a podcast on Forbidden Desert, where we just play the game and talk about it while we're playing it. I have no clue how we would play it. That's a lot of Matt Leacock in one consecutive series of podcasts. Maybe we'll save that for the Leacast. So you don't think Matt Leacock deserves his flowers? Is what I'm hearing. You want to tear him down right now?
Actually, he is a former guest on the Cardboard Herald, and when I talked to him, I asked him something about like, what does he do when he gets a cold? I was very interested in the relationship of like pandemic and him, but we did talk about all kinds of stuff.
What does he do? What does he do? No. What does he do?
I can't remember. This was like 6 years ago. It was my friends Sarah and Miko. They were the most obsessive pandemic players I know. They like log all their results in a notebook that has like a sanctified place in their house, and they play on the hardest difficulty and then play house rules to make it even more difficult. They're insane with their pandemic. But I said, hey, I'm interviewing Matt Leacock, and we're mainly talking about board games, but if there's anything you want me to ask, I will ask one question on your behalf.
Great.
And I can't even remember it at this point, because I've been doing this forever. Seems like. But that's not the topic for today. So why don't you talk about what the pitch is? So
the pitch is you are stranded on a desert island for an unspecified amount of time. I think it can be, we could also, maybe this will be a different level of games we would bring, but 1 year, 5 years, forever. And you can only bring 5 games to entertain yourself for the entire time you are on this desert island. What 5 games do you bring? And this was, you suggested it, but I also was going to suggest it at some point or another, because while we were running I just ran a half marathon, and my sister sent us questions to answer while we ran each mile. And one of the questions she had for me was, or for the group I was running with, was, you're stranded on a desert island for 1 year. You're allowed to bring 1 book, 1 movie, 1 album. And those are the only forms of entertainment you have for the entire year. And my first question was, can I substitute the album for a board game? And they said yes.
I don't know about like ditching music, but I guess you only get a few minutes of entertainment out of a single album. And
I figured album is, depending on what album you choose, unless you choose like a very long album, you're getting sub 1 hour of content there.
Right.
And I figured that was the one I could probably convince us to swap out.
That is good run tech, and something that people who don't do a lot of distance running or cycling or, like some other activity where you just kind of lock in and you go for a long distance, they might not realize that the wandering mind, having something kind of creative to focus on, really distracts you from the exhaustion. And in fact, this ties back to the Cardboard Herald, because the very genesis of Cardboard Herald was on a run here on Brotherhood Trail in Juneau, where I was thinking about creative things that I wanted to do for other reasons. And I was listening to other podcasts, and I was thinking about what I would like to see in a podcast or a written review type of thing. And I, during the run, had thought about it for about half an hour and then hit record and then recorded as I was running on the way back, just like some quick notes on what I wanted this to be, because I didn't want to let that wandering mind just release all that information. So yeah, good tech.
I thought
good question.
I thought you were going to say you just started recording the first podcast, and I was going to say that audio must have been really good.
I think the 100th episode, because there's this whole backlog of interviews when this was just like an audio only podcast thing before we even had like video channel content. I think I put that in the 100th episode.
Oh, fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, this shows about how much of the channel lore I've been privy to.
I mean, for being as old as it is, there's it's not that big of a channel, so like it's not many people know much about the channel lore for as much channel lore and history there is to discover. But anyway, so did you, when you were organizing your Desert Island list, did you put any additional parameters on it beyond just what you've shared?
So I don't think I put any additional parameters in terms of what the games have to be. I think my presumption is there will be, at minimum, 3 other people who are willing to play board games. I think giving yourself that ability to say up to 4 players. You can play more player. I think you can bring games that can play more players, and you can also bring games that are only solo. But the assumption is you have, if you would like them, there are 3 other players that will play with you at your request. That way it's not like you can only bring solo games, or you can't bring games that are that much.
Oh, geez. Pencil falling, dangerous situations, hazards of podcasting. So I thought the same thing. I don't know if there's going to be other players there or not, but I did think about this maybe in a slight askew version of the original premises, or premise. And that's, there's a lot of paranoia going around. There's a lot of, who knows what's happening. And so there was almost this prepper aspect to me, and so I was thinking about, I can't just bring with me all the games that have the most content or the biggest games. So I did apply just a couple parameters to mine. One of those being that I didn't know how many players there were going to be. So it might be just me, might be other people. I don't know who's going to see me on this island. So every one of the games I picked can be played solo. And the second thing was I wanted it to almost be like it could fit in a bug out bag. Like all of the games have to be able to fit into, let's say, a carry-on for an airplane or something about that size. So that way that gives me limitations, and more than anything, that gives me reasons to talk about different games than I normally talk about. There's going to be some overlap. If you know the Cardboard Herald lore enough to know some of the favorite games, you'll see some of the faves come up. But that gave me a reason to kind of search for some different stuff. So, Eric, What, tell me either about what some of the considerations you made when making your list, or go ahead and start it out with the top of your list.
Yeah, so I think the considerations I had going into this were I want them to be games that will be very difficult to have the same experience with, or at least games that I feel like I wanted to have a little bit of a spectrum of games that are easy and like chill, and games that are like crunchy. My goal was to have a little bit of something throughout the spectrum.
Variety.
So with that, I had some games that I went back and forth on a few, where it was either games that are similar or games that were in the same genre, but I might have elected a game that was a little bit lighter, just to make sure I'm hitting all parts of the board gaming spectrum. So for me, first consideration was making sure I had games for all emotional states, when I want a game that's really easy and light, and when I want a game that is challenging. So I'll start off with one that I think there's a chance, I would say, if I had to put a percentage on it, like 80 to 90% chance is also on your list, because when I think of one game that I would want to play forever, it's Spirit Island.
Yeah, it's so thematic. That's also on my list. That is my one.
I thought it was. I thought it would be. It just is. Yeah. We can go back and forth. Game. We can go back and forth on this. But
plays great solo. Plays great with other players. Tons to witness, and even when you're seeing the same cards, the same powers, the same spirits, like you're playing the same spirit, the combination of spirits always makes for unique game states, and the game state itself is going to impact what cards are most worthwhile for you to pick. It just has so much reactivity to it.
Totally.
There's so much to pull out of that game. It's unbelievable, and because it's not a campaign game, you don't necessarily reach an end and go like, well, I'm retreading the same water if I play this over again. Yeah. I think that's actually something that works in its favor as compared to, like, I was like, do I want a Gloomhaven on here?
I feel like I don't have Gloomhaven on my list either, and it's probably for similar reasons, where it's just there is a finite point where I feel like it is. You can still get enjoyment out of Gloomhaven, but you aren't going to get the same novel reaction of discovering the story, like the main overarching story, for the first time as your first playthrough.
Right.
And that is super reasonable to say, like, well, if I'm only there for a year or 5 years, how long was your Gloomhaven campaign?
Yeah. Well,
if you can limit yourself to one session a week for however long, that'll take you how long?
The other thing about Gloomhaven and Frosthaven is, you do retire characters, but you're essentially doing the same thing over and over again. I guess part of it is the, like, participating with a party. And if you're on the island and you're, locked in with your other residents, then maybe that means something. But I don't know. I feel that every game of Spirit Island feels more unique and puzzly than every game of, say, something like Gloomhaven and Frosthaven, even though I really love those games, or Adventure Tactics, or even Sleeping Gods, or some of these other great campaign games. Now, since you went ahead and shared one of yours, so some of the things that I thought about, and Spirit Island is one of mine as well, is I wanted diverse genres. So like you, I wanted kind of like a versatility in games. Variable avenues to explore the games in some way, like either changing up characters or kind of variable strategies within, or different levels of challenge, something that gives it a little bit more consideration other than just the joy of playing it again and again. And then strong components and aesthetic, One of the things I love about board games is I like the tactile nature of them. I like the visuals. I really want, if I only have 5 games, I want them to be something that, like I get a kick out of. So one of my small box considerations was River Valley Glassworks, a recent all-play title. Has just a great central literal river mechanism that you pull gems from, or glass stones that feel really great. They look really great. And it has the vibe of something like Azul or Sagrada. So that kind of ties into that abstract strategy mode, but it's also very easy to teach, and it's very friendly and inviting, and the visuals are top notch. So I was like, yeah, if I'm going to have one of these games, it has solo, it has lots of different levels of solo, it's got a good amount of content, and really stuffs into that small box. Let's go with River Valley Glassworks.
Yeah, totally. And I think that makes sense. I guess when I was planning out mine, I didn't really I was thinking like, you took this as like prepper, like, oh, the world is destroyed. I thought, oh, this is like a Mr. Beast challenge where I get to bring things and it's fun and they'll transport it for me. So this will be an interesting diversion of our list.
Pull off a face mask and I'm Mr. Beast, and you have a chance to win like $10 million.
Hello. Welcome to Board Game Island. Here, you're going to be here about Mr. Beast, 5 of your friends.
Didn't he win a Dune Imperium tournament?
He did. Yeah, no, he's very into board games. He's okay. I think he won a Dune Imperium tournament. He won some. I'm pretty sure it's Dune Imperium. I think you have that spot on. Yeah, he actually is like really... He organized it and then also won it. But not in a way that's sad or underhanded. I think he just was like, I love this board game. I want to play this board game. I have essentially unlimited money. I'm going to throw a tournament for this board game. And therefore, I'm really good at this game because of how much I play it. And he won the tournament. And I'm glad that you mentioned Dune Imperium. I went back and forth a few times with it because I love Dune Imperium. I consider it one of my top 5 games, depending on the day. I went back and forth on Dune Imperium and Clank, also by Paul Dennen, because Clank was like... Clank for me is a comfort game because it's just... It kind of got... It got my wife into board games. It is just a really much simpler to understand deck builder / worker placement type thing. It's not really worker placement, but it's you have a meeple that you move around the board using your cards. And I think Clank with the expansions, again, just for trying to hit all levels of complexity, because I think Dune Imperium is not as difficult as Spirit Island, but I think that it is in the ballpark, at least in terms of like how I internally rank these games. So I chose Clank as one of my other games, as opposed to Dune Imperium, despite the fact that I think that I enjoy Dune Imperium more, but it just will occupy the same space of, oh, I am really going to need to like focus to play this game. Whereas Clank, you can tune out a little bit in some ways, where it's like, you're kind of building an engine. At some point or another, you're just like, well, this is what I have. I'm not going to really like try to optimize this. I'm going to take my 3 movement and move further into the dungeon.
Clank, the board game, does not have Jason Momoa in it. Does that change your opinion?
When you mention it like that, it also doesn't have Timmy.
Yeah.
So that's Timmy tough. C. Big Timmy C, our non-Oscar winner.
Yep. Well,
I think I will stay with Clank.
Another game that does not have Timothée Chalamet or Jason Momoa in it,
which is
unless you discover the secret Easter egg.
Yeah, I was about to say
the White Castle. We talked about it earlier. Now I'm going to leave it to people out there to find, all
Timothée
their
Chalamet.
favorite.
It's just,
yeah,
it's so good to see a board game not have Timothée Chalamet and Jason Momoa. And the White Castle is so brave for not including those two in their board game, and they should be applauded.
We talked about the White Castle earlier, and I did not anticipate us talking about it because while we do some of our individual prep work, we usually don't convene and plan out what the games are that we played in advance. But I sure wrote it down over here. Oh, I guess I'm spoiling the rest of the list.
That's okay.
I don't know how visual that was. But fine. I did write down the White Castle. Again, really strong solo. I'm still in this weird matcha zone. Have you entered the matcha zone yet?
I haven't. I haven't got my hands on the matcha zone.
Okay, when you're up here for your wedding, or I guess wedding celebration, this coming year, we'll play some matcha and see how you feel in the matcha zone. It, on one hand, is a lot more of what I love about the White Castle, and on the other hand, it kind of takes away from what is like so almost like fetishistically pure about the White Castle.
Yeah.
But I can have it with me and choose not to play it or choose to play with it. And that gives me that extra layer. And the White Castle is, I think right now, for the size of box that it is, which is, I consider that lighter side of medium box. And I feel like it's just one of the best worker placement values per box size that you can get out there. I still might like Agricola and Viticulture slightly more. Harvest is also really up there. But if it's just up to me, the White Castle is just, it's so good. It's so good. And the solo is good. We talked about that earlier.
Yeah, solo is good. I think White Castle is a great option to bring. I mean, it's a great game. It's really fun multiplayer in a way that is, in my mind, different than the solo mode. Like, the enjoyment I get out of the solo mode is more anticipating the machine you're playing against versus like the multiplayer. You're trying to anticipate them, but I feel like you are more trying to optimize, like, how do I avoid getting blocked by them in a way that the multiplayer just doesn't quite have. But it's good because they are different. The solo modes are different than and
it's dice worker placement, but done in a way where you're not getting screwed over by the dice.
Yeah.
Because you roll the dice and it's a shared pool.
Yeah,
which is such a cool thing. I mean, I love the Voyages of Marco Polo, or rather, I love Marco Polo 2, which I think is the much better game. But both of those are dice worker placement, but you're still using your personal dice and wringing what you can out of that. Here, it's the contention between the dice that are out there, and sometimes you want the lower dice or the higher dice, and sometimes you want to go second, sometimes you don't. There's a lot of cool things that happen with such a small framework in that. But we've gushed our White Castle hearts out, so let's hear another poll for you.
So this one is going towards the I like having a ton of content and I like having a ton of options to play. And I think you know exactly which game this is. It is Imperium Horizons. Yep. And I think that the thing that really boosts Imperium here with this hypothetical is it is 4 people, and in theory it's the same 4 people. So I only have to go through the nightmare that is teaching this game once. And then I can just play it multiplayer forever. Or 1 year or 5 years.
You can be on the island with 4 people, including yourself. You can break out Imperium and say, hey, do you guys want to play this? And then everyone looks at it and goes, oh, that looks like a lot. And then you're left to your own devices and can play solo as many people find the best version of Imperium.
That is true.
And then problem solved.
I think that for me, that's a great either case is great for me.
Yeah.
It's either I can go ham on all the different variations in the solo mode, playing through the different difficulty levels, or maybe I actually can play multiplayer for more than 2 games with one person, which is currently my high score.
Do you have all of the sets at this point? All 3 of them?
Yeah.
What is your favorite faction to play from each of the sets?
Ooh.
This is also really good audio to pose questions that I didn't prepare you for.
Yeah, no, this is great. Listen, I'll talk about it. I think that in theory, playing against other people, the Wagadu Empire feels very nice from Imperium Horizons, where you're interacting with trade routes more, which means you're interacting with the other players at the table in a way that is somewhat positive. And it seems like a lot of their abilities allow you to do that. But then they have like the weird pact with Bada, which just gives you like a little bit of friction that you have to deal with every time in a way that is fun. In terms of solo, I think that I like the Qin dynasty because you have to bounce back and forth between Confucianism and legalism in a way that is, I find, rewards skill, which if I'm going to be playing solo mode, is nice. It's nice to feel like what I'm doing is really, really impactful. That was the first dynasty. That was the first thing that I played as. So for me, I feel like it's. I have a little bit of sentimentality towards them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would play Imperium with you if we were on a desert island.
I just don't know if that's true.
Well, I mean, then you'd still be happy, right?
I'd still be happy. This is true. That is the outcome that I'm hoping for.
I really want to see you bring Imperium Horizons to like a public meetup.
Yeah.
And the full intent is to show that, you're happy to be here. You're here to be social. But then you're just off in your corner playing that by yourself.
It would be like that.
Be totally fine too.
That photo of a shark in the middle of a school of fish, just completely empty space around him while everybody else is hanging out. Could be fun.
Yeah,
could be good.
I like it.
We're at a desert island. The confessionals for that season of Survivor are going to be rad. And it's like, yeah, that guy just. He hasn't just been asking him to come to the challenges, and he's just over there playing Imperium Horizons. Nobody knows what it is. He won't explain it. He says he gets scared.
Well, my next game is another small box game, and I wanted to go for what was the small box game, like the smallest box that I'd still really want to bring, get a lot of content out of it, has solo mode, plays well multiplayer. Like there are a lot of things that I considered. Like I could go as far down as like a button shy game or a pack of cards, but I thought a pack of cards was a little
I was thinking Regicide could be an option, but then you just
Regicide
kind of because you have a deck of cards.
That was a consideration, but I am nothing if not joyous to talk about some newer stuff and some stuff that doesn't get on a lot of people's radars. So I picked Boblin's Rebellion.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You just did a review on that. It looks really interesting.
Yeah, it's in a little square box. It has a completely unhinged visual aesthetic. I think it's actually a spin-off of a other series, Drop Dungeon and Drop Space, I want to say.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Yeah, and so it just has this look where everything is cubes in a completely goofy way, and it takes what Terraforming Mars does of having like the three types of cubes, depending on their placement on your tableau, represent a different type of currency. It does that, except it's just one cube for everything. There is a second cube for like the antagonistic trolls, but otherwise you just have this goblin cube, and that goblin could be a basic goblin or any other type of goblin. It's actually a really good small engine building game that is cute. It's fun. It's silly. It has some really smart things, and I found myself in a position recently to be talking about engine building games where I hear a lot of discourse online where people are like, I want an engine building game where you actually get your engine going and then get to experience your engine. And I disagree with that. You know, like I find the act of building the engine is the really satisfying part. You know, like really making challenging decisions and sacrifices to kind of get that going. But then when you're just performing at ultimate levels of efficiency, it becomes much more boring because you've already done what you need to do. And if the game continues too much longer, then it's just like, well, this is more performative at this point. So one thing that I think Boblin's Rebellion does really well that other broader, more grander in scope engine building games could do is a lot of the tools that you have collapse as you use them a certain number of times. So you're constantly having to feed new things into the engine, not just resources, but the infrastructure itself, which is a really cool idea. And when you get things exchanging at a good rate, it feels like you consistently have more capabilities, but nonetheless, you don't ever reach a level of like automation that takes away the fun of the game.
Yeah, totally. Two notes. One, the games are Dungeon Drop and Drop Drive are the games that it is vaguely tied to. And two, a thing that I having read like board game design theory, that sometimes board game design theory is not the most accurate, or maybe it's a bit outdated as games and tastes have changed. But one thing that I agree with is always ending the game one turn for engine building games. End it one turn before the engine would be complete, so that players always are like making choices to build their engine. And it sounds like with Boblin's Rebellion, it is. You did the thumbs up again.
I didn't even have my thumb up. It was like over by my cheek.
This is so off topic. We were FaceTiming some friends of ours today, and we did this, and it caused a rain cloud to happen. And I was very confused how it happened because I forgot that iOS just does that now.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, it's that they're predicting everything for us.
For the audio listeners, Jack gave a thumbs up, and he got the little bubble thumbs up. But
don't give them a carrot. Make them come to the channel for context.
Okay,
you know?
Audio listeners, forget what I said. Forget all of it. No more. But yeah, I think that like again, I haven't played Boblin's Rebellion. But it does sound like it gives you a really interesting reason why you can't just put the engine on autopilot, and you still have to make like you have to make choices every round. and those choices seem meaningful in a way that if you have an engine builder that just goes,
right,
that's much less fun at the end of it, at least. I also like that you said, I found myself in a situation where I was talking about engine building to start that talk about engine building, as if you didn't purposefully put yourself in that situation recording a review.
Yeah,
I found myself in a situation. How could I possibly have foreseen this?
to get into how the sausage is made, whenever I'm working on a review, largely they are scripted. The things that are labeled as like mini reviews or seem more conversational than they probably are, I do some unscripted stuff. But if it's just TCbH review, chances are I scripted it, and I spent a lot of time thinking about like what it is that I want to say. And rarely am I trying to explain the entirety of a game, because I think most people who are looking up a review for a game can suss out the majority of what they need to know about most of it if you give just a little bit of context. Some commenters would take issue with that because they want me to explain a lot more of the game, but I guess that's for other channels. But I do try to think about like what are the three prevailing positive or negative thoughts that I have about this game, the things that were neat or interesting or novel that are worth discussing. Like if I were to be hanging out with Eric, independent of recording anything, and I was like, hey, dude, have you checked out this game? Mm-hmm. Well, it's this type of game, but you know what it really does? And so in this review of Life of the Amazonia, it's a game that I really like, but I kept on thinking about, like, as I played it several times, each time I got to the point where, like, my engine was as good as it was going to be, and I still had a bunch of turns left. And so, like, the first hour and a half of that game is like, oh, feels so good. And then it was just getting it done. Spirit Island has a lot of the same accusations that people lay on it. You know, you get to the point where you see that you've won the game, and then it's a round or two as you perform the ending. But I find that much more satisfying because you're still having to make interesting decisions, whereas the end of Life of Amazonia, which is a good game, I do like that game, still has this weird feeling of the best parts of the game were behind you, and now you're just grasping as many animals as quickly as you can to drain the pool.
Yeah, and I think with Spirit Island the biggest difference is in my mind, I can see where that argument's going, where it's like, you know you've won. Why is the game not over yet? But it feels a lot more, oh yeah, I did it. I get to do the last few actions to prove that I did it. And also, like, if you see that you have already done it, you can just choose to end it. Like, you can just say, like, okay, cool, well, we've won. If you want to. Yeah. Like, in a way that's different because, you know, it's, first of all, it's cooperative. You can say, okay, well, we can verifiably prove that we have won the game. We don't need to go through all of this. And hopefully people don't take that to a non-official ending. We're getting a little off topic, so I'm going to ring it back in. Ring it back in? Yeah, you did Boblin's Rebellion. It's up to me now. The fourth game I have on my list, and this kind of, it's good because we just talked about this game quite a bit last week. I even put it in the thumbnail, is Sushi Go. Like, I just think that is a very good for me. This is easy. I am not going to really think about it too much. I'm kind of turning my brain off, and we're having a fun kind of social time. And at the same time, if we do want to take it very seriously, it's a game that highly encourages social interaction of, oh, what is everybody else grabbing? Like, I need to make sure that I see what the Maki rolls are doing around me in a way that I think works. I could see the argument of doing Seven Wonders here instead, but I think, I mean, Seven Wonders with the expansions,
leaders, and
there's an argument that is the better game to bring here, and it's probably just because Sushi Go was on my mind because we talked about it so much last week, and I do love Seven Wonders, and in theory I probably should choose Seven Wonders, but I wrote down Sushi Go, so we're sticking with Sushi, and I think Sushi Go Party is fun and more I'm looking for the lowest level I have to think game that I would still want to play many times.
Okay, so if I were moving across the country, as you recently did, Sushi Go might be one of those games where I'm like, oh, I want this game to have like a really light game in case I'm going to public meetups.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm going to a pub night or something. Like at my regular public meetup, a lot of the games that we play are oink games or, you know, smaller party games or more social games. Sushi Go works perfect for that. I don't really see it as a desert island game personally because, you know, like there's only so much you're going to get out of Sushi Go after 5 years. Yeah. And, you know, like that wasn't a consideration for me, but it is a nice small game and you could probably do something survivalistic with the tin that it comes in.
Yeah, that's true. It might be helpful for like water condensation or something like that. I don't know. I don't plan on actually being on a desert island. I plan on being on a Mr. Beast island.
Oh, okay.
Where they give me food and money, and also friends
beat
to
you
play
at
board
Dune
games.
Imperium.
And Jimmy comes out and goes, "I am playing as Timothée Chalamet on a desert island."
I think he should use his vast sums of money to hire Timothée Chalamet to be the like local host. So like, you know, this is sponsored by Mr. Beast, but Timothée Chalamet is performing as Mr. Beast on the island. Yeah.
Timothée Chalamet dresses up as Mr. Beast. He just dresses in a suit, so it's not that crazy. That would be very fun to have Timothée Chalamet play Mr. Beast while Mr. Beast plays in a Dune Imperium tournament on a desert island as like the concept of a video.
Wait, is this a board game podcast or is this a award-winning script writing podcast? Because we got gold on our hands.
We got gold.
Okay, my last game on here. Let me double check because we have digressed so much. Yes, my last game. I went for one other medium-sized game. I'm assuming Spirit Island with expansion content is large. I have that kind of consolidated to a Franken box, but I got it all in one box, and then. We had Boblin's Rebellion. We had River Valley Glassworks, both as small games. And then in the medium territory, and we already talked about the White Castle, and just a little bit bigger than that is Terraforming Mars Ares Expedition.
Yeah.
Which we've talked about.
Yeah.
And you could accuse Ares Expedition of having some of these like challenges with engine building games where you get to the point where it's like, oh, I'm the God Emperor of Mars at this point. I just need to take a few more action phases and we're done.
Yeah.
But that always feels to me like maybe the last, you know, like 2 rounds of the game instead of the last, you know, several turns that you're performing things. And it's just so varied. There's so much in that little box, especially if you have the expansions which fit inside of the box. Great components. Visuals, not so great, but you know, hey, the original Terraforming Mars wasn't exactly a looker either. And I can wring a lot out of that. Solo, the okay cooperative mode that's in the base game, or the slightly better but still okay cooperative mode in the expansion, or just competitive, which is great. I love that game, and it fits within my scheme of having an array of different sizes of game.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that I heavily considered it just because Terraforming Mars is just such that both the base game and Ares Expedition are games that I frequently want to play. Like it is going to be tough for me to be in a situation where I don't want to play either of those games. And I think Ares Expedition
Sushi Go. Yeah. Sushi Go was, what you chose instead. So, When you put it like that in a vacuum, would I rather play Ares Expedition or Sushi Go? Sushi Go wins every time.
I did say that. That is exactly what I said with my list. I was choosing an array. Of games from turn my brain off to full brain power, more than 10% of my brain, which is a nonsense thing, but I still will use it for this example. I was like, I would like to use only 10% of my game when I play this. And I kind of had this, I didn't put this at the front, so now it might seem like I'm backtracking. I had a little bit of a mind when I was making this that the people I was on the island with aren't board gamers. And so I wanted games at like every step to get them into board gaming, even though none of my other games have tableau building or like I pick and pass a card mechanisms in them. But
I see. Okay.
I had that in my mind too, because we just talked about gateway games, and it was in the back of my mind. I'm not going to say it was the end all be all.
I mean, it wasn't that much in the back of your mind, considering one of the games that you were choosing was Imperium Horizons, and like I do not see the logistical path between Sushi Go and being like, well, now that you got this covered, here's Imperium Horizons.
Okay, we'll say, in my mind, Spirit Island is most difficult, most brain is functioning game. And then small step below is Imperium Horizons.
Okay.
At the earlier end of it, we have Sushi Go and Clank with the expansions.
And now you're number 5.
And my number 5, and I went back and forth on this because I really wanted to include Harmonies because I like it a lot at this exact moment.
Uh-huh.
I haven't sat with it for very long, so it's possible I get bored of it. Because at the moment,
we've talked about it a lot recently.
And so I went to choose... I chose a different game that I'm choosing because I've had such fun experiences playing it, and I feel like every time I play it, I get a story of what's happening as we build out the board slowly. And again, this is a game that is one that I feel like I can play with anybody and hopefully ease them into Imperium Horizons, and that game is Carcassonne with all of the expansions. And you can add them in and take them out. What's up?
Including the catapult?
I'd say yeah, sure. We don't have to play with catapult. We don't have to play with the catapult. But it's at least an option. But I just feel like anytime I play Carcassonne, it is light. We build a fun story with how we build out the map. And I think that it would get very... I can see it becoming repetitive, which is one of the reasons why I went back and forth on having this on my list versus Harmonies versus Cascadia. And I was trying to get games that all occupied that like half step above Sushi Go, where it is games that are not the most difficult in the world, but are still pretty light and give you interesting choices. And I feel like you build you build U-Turn City, you build Mega City every time, and you build things that have like fun names that you've created the name for, and it's not logical, but it's like, it's a very social thing that brings you to a point where you are talking about the other players at the table and trying to scheme around with how is Jack going to try to connect his farmer to my field. it I think just invites a lot more of interaction with the other players at the table in a way that is lighthearted and fun. And it's a great game. And I think
you say lighthearted and fun. I say
in a mean way.
Great way of inviting like mutiny and cannibalism, possibly. Like dangerous things are happening on that island after, like someone is learning, because in your island people are just learning these games and you're taking them through a journey. I don't think you're going to have to worry about having other players when you get to Imperium, because the moment someone plays Carcassonne and they're like, oh, this is such a fun, nice game. Isn't it nice to just like put our things out? And then someone else realizes, oh, I could just make your castle impossible to build. I don't even have to be in it. I'm just going to put this here. And now you'll never get to finish that.
Yeah.
And you could say goodbye to that worker. It's just gone forever. Gone. Your cathedral.
It's there. In shambles.
Exactly.
Your field, all barren.
Exactly.
Your crops, eviscerated.
And never mind the idea of getting your farmer into someone else's zone, or your castle be like, oh, you did a lot of work on this castle. Yeah. I'm just going to nudge myself a little bit closer, and you know what? It can be our castle.
It's weird.
That is going to break a lot of hearts and possibly break a lot of skulls with the lack of food and overexposure to sunshine on your desert island.
See, but I feel like in those moments when you have like these huge villain turns in Carcassonne, it invites monologuing in a way that's really fun for a desert island.
Perfect.
I
love it.
That thing that famously has a lot of people talking back and forth. Instead, you can just have one person doing a villain monologue to the other people.
Yeah.
That fun thing that happens all the time.
I think we just discovered some new board game shorts possibilities that we could put onto YouTube, which is like your villainous monologuing as you are about to do something really skullduggerous in Carcassonne.
It's interesting, that castle you've built. The walls seem sturdy. The city's finances seem to be blooming. It's a shame that field it's connected to has a little opening for my castle. And the only way you'll be able to complete this is joining our cities.
I'm so here for this and loving this like dramatic production that's happening right now. I am kind of worried about the cord wrapping around Eric as he twists his chair. There's some concerning implications of the 360 that's happening right now. So that while he completes his heel turn, get it? Heel turn. While he unwinds himself, that's our 5. That's our 5 each, which I guess ultimately ended up at 9, right?
Yeah, our 9 total games. My 5, just to recap, were Spirit Island, Imperium Horizons, Sushi Go, Clank, and Carcassonne. I feel like I got a nice little spread. All things considered, you got a nice wide array of how much effort you put in, and then also, varying forms of content in there with the different expansions for Carcassonne and Clank, as well as Spirit Island, obviously.
And these lists are really here to give us ways of thinking about our collections in different lights than just simply what our favorite games are. And sometimes you end up with some of your favorite games still at the top. As this podcast goes on, if you want to hear more lists out of us or other ideas for discussions, definitely let us know. Wrapping up my list for my small box games, I had Boblin's Rebellion and River Valley Glassworks. For my medium-sized games, I had The White Castle and Terraforming Mars Ares Expedition. And for my large game, I had Spirit Island. And similarly, I think it's a good spread. I think the well-reasoned and different perspectives on how we approached this very broad topic.
I just think you're gonna miss not having Sushi Go.
I think so.
I think you're gonna really, really feel that absence.
Well, it was a strong sixth. It could have been that. It was a contender. Like Marlon Brando in At the Waterfront.
Yeah, he could have been a contender. We have one audience list here that I think would be interesting to discuss now that we have decided upon ours. Just to pull it up and chat about it and kind of our thoughts on why we would or why we wouldn't bring a game. And I think for some of these, it is... I think we were thinking of different islands in a way. So from Blue Sec Pearl, the comment is, my criteria are variety, replayability, and escapism. Taking a pack of cards off the list, as that would be cheating, and we agreed. But incredibly versatile. This is a tangent within the customer or the audience comment. Boy,
customer.
If I could bring a dice set, we would be set. I'd be playing so much Dungeons and Dragons. We'd be playing a Dungeons and Dragons campaign set on an island. Boy.
That's a good call.
Hours of fun, but I think that's out of the purview of this question. Back to the comment. Here are my selections. Skull. I have the first edition that plays up to 12. Nice bluffing snack size game. Monikers.
Good.
Solid party game that creates wonderful inside jokes and provides levity in a stressful environment. Could be really fun on a desert island to have some levity. Spirit Island, which we're in agreement with. Lots of way to play. My main concern is that it might suffer the fate of Pandemic during the pandemic. Do you really want to play Unrelenting Gaze of the Sun on a beach? I would substitute Terraforming Mars, is what it says.
I disagree. Spirit Island is inherently triumphant. That is our island, and we are the keepers of the island until we are rescued. So if there are any invaders that come to the island without the intent to rescue us, we must repel them.
Yeah, that's true.
It gives us training. And dark irony. Don't dismiss dark irony.
Betrayal at the House on the Hill. Emergent storytelling with 50 to 100 scenarios. I think they're including Widow's Walk on that. And then Ticket to Ride Rails and Sails, or Botany, a simple game about traveling the world while stuck on a beach. I think this is a solid list. I think in my mind, when I'm thinking, I kind of put the stipulation on myself that it would be limited to, or not limited to, but like you would have 4 players total. Which Monikers, if you have like a whole island full of people, Monikers is great. I think that's a great game for creating those inside jokes and giving you some sort of creativity in terms of trying to figure out how to best mime forth many of the suggestions.
Loses points for having a rival, as if we're rivals. Special edition with the moniker "Shut Up and Sit Down" hilarity box or whatever it is. Now, until Monikers is coming to the true best board game channel on the internet,
what would some of the prompts be? Please tell me what some of the prompts would be for a card.
Hey, I'm not selling this right here, right now, giving away these ideas for other chumps like, Shut Up and Sit Down, Dice Tower, for them to steal our ideas as they've been doing nonstop since before this podcast even existed. Monikers is a great idea. There's a lot of good social games that could have gone on here. It's just... you know, like when it really comes down to it, I really want those strategy games, and I'll get the social element, or we could play, you know, like charades, or you know,
we don't need a board game to play charades.
Yeah, exactly.
Skull, I think, is great. I love Skull. I think that's a solid bluffing game. I think my thoughts on it are the like status quo would change a lot. So there's a lot of adapting to what other people are doing. I would worry with it becoming stale, just in terms of there isn't an element of randomness in a way. Like you're not bluffing based on a deck of cards, and like you can't necessarily learn the best probabilities of what's going to be coming out here in a way that I feel like you would start missing out on after a bit.
The first year that Coup came out, I probably played at least 50, probably upwards towards 100 games of Coup. And let me tell you, as good of a game as Coup is, and I could totally play that right now, you start going, I am done with Coup. I don't need more Coup. I'm good on the Coup. And I think that Skulls might suffer the same fate. Especially because a single game of Skull is over in about 10 minutes, which is a perfect amount of time for Skull. But then you usually want to play it maybe a couple times while you're having drinks or whatever, and then move on to something else, or maybe that's the night. It's very much an activity to do while you're doing something else. I'm thinking of this list personally as like, this is one of the chief forms of entertainment that we have here. This is one of our only luxuries that we have on this island. So I wanted more meat on the bones.
Yeah, totally. And then I think my last, not necessarily my last thought, another thought I have on this is Betrayal at House on the Hill. I think the emergent storytelling is really fun. I hadn't really necessarily considered that, but that is also a game that has a lot of, you make your own story as you play it, of like, who are these characters that we're playing as? What are they doing? And then you also then end up with one of the many different endings you might have, and that is what it is. I think that the fact that there are like limited 50 to 100 with Widow's Walk, I'm pretty sure that's the number it gets up to with that expansion, that it is, I don't think it's limited in the same way that Gloomhaven is, because even if you play the same scenario, you know, you kind of got there in a different way most of the time. At the same time,
I just don't like playing it. Like, I don't really love Betrayal. Like, it is very good for what it is, and when it came out. Like, it's an important moment in board gaming history. But I don't really want to play it.
I was going to say that the enjoyment I get out of Betrayal at House on the Hill is the storytelling aspect of it. You're not making many strategic choices in this game. It's more, you have to make up the story as you go along, and that to me is the fun part about it. And I feel like there are other games that do that part of this better. At the same time, if your friend group likes Betrayal at House on the Hill, yeah, totally, bring this game. This is a great game. If your friend group is the type that is going to be like full send on the weird, absurdist improv comedy that comes out of playing a game of Betrayal at House on the Hill, then that's a great game to bring with you. Especially if you guys are okay with, like, you might end up replaying one of the 50 to 100 scenarios. I think it can be a great game on a desert island, depending on who else is on the island with you. And then my last thought is, you don't have Sushi Go, so 0 out of 10.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No Timothy Chalamet, no Jason Momoa, no Mr. Beast, no Sushi Go. Like, no what is this list?
What is this doing? List? What are you looking for here? and also, another thought: no Drop Holter. I can't believe that they wouldn't include Drop Holter on their list of games that they would have to play for an entire year. Do you know how strong your hand muscles would get?
You'd be able to
build a boat and get off that island.
Exactly.
Exclusively off hand muscles.
Drop Holter. Well, we want to hear from everyone about what their personal desert island list is, and get creative. What are the parameters that you would put on it? What do you think of our list? And also, ultimately, even if we're dunking on some other games here, the right games are the games for you. And that's what we as a community and we as the Cardboard Herald are all about, is making sure that people find the games that are going to resonate the most with them. And so where can people go to drop us a line, Eric?
Find us on YouTube at The Cardboard Herald. You can also find us on Spotify under The Cardboard Herald, or go to The Cardboard Herald or just cardboardherald.com.
Just cardboardherald.com.
Cardboardherald.com. And you can also email us at cardboardherald@gmail.com if you want to message us there. That's a great way of reaching out to us, and we look forward to that. I think on both Spotify and, well, definitely YouTube and Spotify, you can leave comments for us there, and we will always take a look at those and respond to those in the best way that we can. Let us know. I kind of want to hear other people's desert islands, because now that I've put my list out there, I'm obviously a bit self-conscious about my list, because why would I not be?
No, it's a perfect list. It's perfect.
And I want to hear people dunk on me for my choices. Tell me why some of these games are not the best, and also dunk on Jack too. If you're gonna dunk on me, also dunk on Jack. It's very important his ego does not get that big.
Perfect list. There is
not
a single flaw in it. Yeah, it's objective. We're done. Like, board game content creation is done. It's done. Want it. Yeah.
I'll email Shut Up and Sit Down in the Dice Tower and Rodney.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll let them all know it's time to shut it down, turn the servers off. Thank you all for listening, as this is going to be the final Cardboard Herald podcast, apparently. As I've just found out 3 seconds ago, that all cardboard...
I got this...
sorry.
I got this breaking news. Breaking news. There is a really hideous new version of Quacks of Quedlinburg.
Oh, I saw that.
That's dropping.
It looks bad.
We'll have at least some more content to talk about in the coming year.
Podcast isn't canceled. You can tune in next week, probably on Sundays when it'll come out. Sunday at noon Eastern time, almost certainly. Sometimes it's Monday. Occasionally it's been Tuesday, but usually Sunday, Monday, or Tuesday. The next episode will be coming out thanks to this new edition of Quacks of Quedlinburg that has just been announced. Thank you for tuning in. I have been Eric with the Cardboard Herald podcast, along with Jack.
That's me. And tell us if you have some topics, because Quacks is not going to be the topic. We don't want to just dunk on it.
What? Jack, I promised the audience.
Well, no, you promised that because of Quacks, but, are we going to fill an entire episode with speculation on just, cover art? Do you think people actually make content that's speculation based off of, trailers and cover art and, movie posters and that kind of stuff? Yeah.
Probably not.
Come on. That wouldn't be low-hanging fruit that people would turn to immediately.
It would be really good for our audio podcast to talk about the board game cover. Thank you for tuning in.
Thanks, everyone. Later. Bye.